Welcome everybody, I am Tock Custom, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to read and create your own pattern from scratch. If you're new to sewing and you feel comfortable running a sewing machine, getting a pattern is the best way to create whatever you're trying to make. But if you've never read a pattern before, it can be kind of confusing, so I'm going to show you everything you need to know and keep it nice and simple. Alright, so to get started, you're going to need some kind of a pattern of what you want to make, a marker, and something to cut with. And I've got a ruler, which really helps with making patterns. The other thing I use for making patterns is this easy pattern tracing cloth. I'll talk more about this as we get farther into the video, but this stuff is perfect for making patterns. So what we need to look at is the front of the pattern. So this pattern comes with 4 different variations of a button-down shirt. Now I want to make pattern A, which is the short sleeve button-down collared shirt. Something you need to be aware of is the size that comes in this pattern. So this is small, medium, and large. I'm a large, so I'm going to be doing that. But sometimes they'll sell a different pattern that has XL, 2XL, 3XL. So make sure you get the one that you need. Now, I'm going to be doing pattern A, which is the short sleeve button down, so I need to look at the back of this now. Now, as you look at the back, there's a ton of information here, so I'm going to cover what you need to know. The first thing we need to look at is the suggested fabrics, and this recommends a cotton blend, or something woven, something that will not stretch. Now, these are all the different styles of shirts here. So I'm going to be doing shirt A, and I'm a large, so I'm going to be looking right here. Now, by shirt A, it says if you have 45-inch wide fabric, you need 2 yards of fabric. And if you have 60-inch wide fabric, you need 1 5/8 yard. I always buy a little bit of extra fabric just in case I want a pattern match or if I make mistakes. So when you're buying a pattern at the fabric store, this will tell you exactly how much fabric you need to complete your project. Now, after you find out how much fabric you need, it says that we need 7/8 of a yard of fusible interfacing for shirt A. And fusible interfacing is the stuff that goes into the collar and the cuffs. We'll talk more about that in the next video. Now, we're going to move down a little bit here. Now we're going to look at where it says notions. And notions are anything that's not fabric. So for shirt A, it says I need 7 half-inch buttons. Other things that are notions might be like a zipper or Velcro or other things like that. Now that is everything you need to know from the front and back of a pattern to make sure that you've got the pattern you want, the amount of fabric that you need, any other notions that you have, and the style that you want to complete. Now we're going to take our pattern and instructions out. So this is the instructions and this is the actual pattern. So we're going to put the patterns aside for right now and just look at the instructions. So I'm going to unfold this and just look at page 1 of our pattern here. All right, now this is the opening page of our instructions, and I know it looks very intimidating, but I'm going to break this down and make it very simple. All right, so this first box shows you all the different variations of this pattern. So I am going to circle A, because that's what we're going to make. And now as I move down, this shows you all the different panels that come in your pattern. So what I want to do is I'm going to put a dot next to everything that's in pattern A. So the pocket, the front panel, the flap I don't need because that says D and E. The yoke I don't need, the yoke back I don't need. The back I do need, which is panel 6. Sleeve A, I want that. Then sleeve 8 and 9, I don't need those because those aren't part of A. I don't need a cuff. I do need a front band or a placket. I need the collar, and I need the collar band or collar stand. So in this pattern, I only need to cut out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things to make this shirt. Now, the next thing is at the top of the page. So this is the pattern marking. So you're going to mark these on your actual pattern. And the first thing is the grain line, which is this is the direction in which you cut it out on the fabric. And I'll show you that as we're making the pattern. If you see this symbol, which is kind of like a box with 2 arrows pointing at a line, that means you're going to cut it on the fold line. Again, I'll talk more about that as we get there. If you see something that looks like this, that is where you're going to do a buttonhole. If you see an X, that's where a button will go. And then there's all your notches and symbols, and I will show you how these work as we start making our pattern. All these notches and markings are very important, so I'll make sure to point that out when we get there. The most important thing in this pattern is this thing right here that says seam allowance. So the entire project is going to be done at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that goes throughout the entire project unless otherwise indicated, okay? And I'll talk more about that as we're cutting out the pattern and as we're actually putting this shirt together in the next video. Now, we were just looking at these 4 or 5 things right here. Everything else up here, you don't need to know right now, so don't worry about that at all. Okay, now we're at the part where we need our actual pattern. Now, this is very thin paper, so it can tear easily, so be very delicate while you're opening this up. Now, the reason I figure out which panels I need is because you're going to get all these different shapes, and you need to know which ones you want to cut out for your specific project. All right, so let's take a closer look at panel 6 here. So this is my back panel. Something this particular panel has is it has this fold line mark right here. So that means I'm going to fold the fabric in half, and I'm going to put this right on the edge of that fold and cut this out so that it opens up to one big back panel. Now up here, you're going to see all these different styles of lines. Now these are your sizes. So if I was making a small, I'd follow this line, but I'm making a large, so I'm going to be following the outside line all the way around here. If you see any marks that have your size that corresponds with it, so there's an L right next to this triangle, I'm going to transfer that to my pattern. And same thing with these notches. Same goes for any double notches. I'll show you how those work when we get to that on the pattern as well. Now, because I'm making style A of this shirt, I know that I need the 6th panel. And this right here is the whole back panel, and this is panel number 6. So this is where our tracing cloth comes in. So what I want to do is I'm going to cut out a piece of this tracing cloth here so that it's tall enough to cover that entire panel. Also, it is important to know that this tracing cloth comes folded in half, so you actually get a ton of this material when you buy it. Something else that's great about this tracing cloth is you can iron it so it's not going to warp or stretch, and I'm going to iron this before I even start tracing so that it's nice and smooth. So now it's time to start tracing out our panel. I know it's hard to see on camera, but this material, this tracing cloth, is transparent, so I can actually see the lines through here. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace the lines all the way around the large size from what I can see. And this right here tells me, there's my little mark that tells me I need to cut this on the fold line, so I'm going to transfer that to my pattern right here. Okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to mark any notches or symbols. Like right here, there's a notch on the shoulder seam, and I think there was a double notch here. And right here, there's a double notch. And the notches are what help you match up your panels of fabric with the other pieces so that everything fits together. Something else I always do is I always write the number of the pattern on here so that when we get to the instructions, I know exactly what this is. And I'm also going to put what the pattern is. So I'm going to put back, and then I'm going to write cut one piece on fold. And that's going to tell me I just need to cut this once on a fold line. Now I'm just going to finish tracing out the rest of this real quick and I'll show you what's next. One more thing that's smart to do is to put the size of what your panel is. So I always put large with a circle so that I know if this ever gets mixed up with my medium or small patterns that I know that this is the large back piece. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this out. You can either use scissors or I'd like to use a rotary cutter. So for straight lines, I am just going to use a straight edge to do that. For this long back panel, I'm going to just cut this whole thing out all the way around. Now the rest of these lines are not straight, so I'm just going to use my rotary cutter to very carefully follow those lines. And again, you can use a pair of scissors just as easily, but I find that rotary cutters are quite a bit faster. Excellent, so we have our first panel done, and I know this is panel number 6. This is my back panel. I need to cut one on the fold line according to the symbol down here. I know it's a size large, and I've got all my marks and notches all the way around this thing. So this is perfect. This is exactly what you want to see. Now, the funny thing is, I've already made this pattern. In fact, I made it in January of 2015, which is quite a while ago. But this is the same pattern that we were just making earlier. So because I made it with that tracing cloth, I just put it in an envelope and labeled it. And now I've got all my panels folded up nicely into this envelope. And when I open this up, I've got everything I need from the front, the back, the collar, you know, the sleeve, everything. And it will get a little creased and wrinkled, but I can iron all of this so it's flat. So let me iron this real quick. Now, when you're finished cutting out all of your panels from whatever pattern that you chose, you should have something that looks like this. So I've got everything that I need for style A of the shirt that I want to make. There's a couple other things I wanted to point out. So this is the front placket. So this is where all the buttons are going to go. So this would kind of line up with the front of my shirt here. And this has all of the markings where buttons and buttonholes need to go all the way down here. This line right here is where my breast pocket will go. So that will kind of line up like that. And all these other notches and markings help you figure out how to put everything together. All right, now there's something else very important I want to point out. Now, on most of the panels, you're going to see when you trace this out, there is this big long arrow right here that has a point pointing down. And that's called the grain line arrow. So let's say I was going to make a shirt out of this amazing Beauties and Brains fabric. I would want to make sure that I'm following this grain line so that when I cut this all out, all of the graphics are right side up. Otherwise, you're going to get things that are sideways or upside down and stuff like that. So be very aware of how you're lining up your panels with your fabric so that when you cut it out, everything comes out the right way. This is especially important for stretchy materials, but this isn't a stretchy material. And same thing again, this is another perfect example. This is our sleeve, so I'd want to make sure that my grain line is following the length of this fabric. So keep that in mind when you start cutting out your fabric. All right, so that is how you read and make a pattern, which is not that hard actually. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not so bad. So with all the instructions, I always keep these in the actual envelope that the pattern came in, which is fine. And then with the pattern itself, I can literally just fold these up and put these into a pre-labeled envelope that I made, telling me what it is, so I can make this shirt dozens or even hundreds of times if I wanted to. Okay, I think we've done a very good job of covering the basics of how to buy a pattern and make it once you get it at home. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I think in our next video, I'm actually going to make that shirt to teach you guys how to make your own button-down collared shirt. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other ideas of things you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.